Welcome back everyone. If you're new here, I've got a bit of reputation for ranking entire libraries of games built on legendary engines. We've done Wolfenstein 3D engine games, we've done Doom engine games, and now it's time to tackle the Quake engine, one of the most influential game engines of all time. Before we dive into the list, let me just say that this wasn't an easy task. This ranking is based on my personal impressions after playing all these games, reading and watching reviews, and even checking out similar rankings to see how others felt about these titles. But of course this is my list, and I've also added my own flair. By the way, you can find my previous rankings of Wolfenstein and Doom engine games on my channel, and I've even made a handy playlist for all videos like this one. Go binge them after this one, you won't regret it. Starting off the list, we've got Urban Mercenary. Now, I'll admit, this game has a fascinating backstory. It was one of the first multiplayer games where you could actually earn real money in tournaments. Players could bet on matches, frag their way to victory, and cash out real-world dollars. Pretty innovative, right? On top of that, it used GL Quake, a modified version of the Quake engine, and introduced features like 8-bit textures, new particle effects, and even bots for offline play. But that's where the good news ends. The game's servers have been offline for years, the developer's website is dead, and now the game exists as abandonware. Even back in the day, the gameplay wasn't polished and it felt more like a proof of concept than a fully realized game. If you're curious, you can still play it offline, but let's just say this one's more interesting for its history than its actual gameplay. Next up, in 23rd place, is CIA Operative Solo Missions. This game, well, it's bad. I mean, really bad. It's like someone had half an idea for a spy game and decided to call it a day before they finished. To be fair, graphics were pretty decent for 2001 Quake engine game, but that's where the positives stop. The AI is laughable, the missions are repetitive, and the whole game can be completed in about 2 hours, at most. It feels more like half-finished mod than a full game. To make matters worse, the music randomly cuts out, leaving you with awkward silence as you trudge through uninspired levels. Honestly, I'd avoid this one unless you're curious to see how low the bar for FPS games can go. In 22nd place we have Eternal War Shadows of Light, a Christian-themed shooter running on a modified Quake engine. Now, before you roll your eyes, let me say this. The game tried something different, and I respect that. It features 17 levels that can be played solo or co-op, and there's even a survival mode called Flood, where you fend off waves of demons. The weapons range from medieval tools like daggers and swords to holy spells powered by mana. Oh, and you can pray to heal yourself, which also banishes demons nearby. That's a unique mechanic. But despite all this ambition, the game struggles with repetitive gameplay, clunky mechanics, and uninspired level design. It's a fascinating oddity, but not one you're likely to come back to after the novelty wears off. In 21st place we've got The Hunted, a game that truly tested my patience. Imagine fighting zombies with nothing but a knife, and not the cool fast-paced kind of knife combat. I'm talking about slowly stabbing the same animation 37 times while awkwardly backpedaling. That's this game in a nutshell. The level design is frustrating to say the least. Key items are hidden in spots you can't even jump to, and the lack of weapons turned the gameplay into a tedious grind. At one point I gave up and turned on God mode just to get through it. I'll give the developer some credit for effort, since this was made by one person who was, I think, just learning how to create games, but the game ends up being more boring than challenging. It's like he went out of his way to make sure you'd never find a gun. And let's be real, stabbing zombies 300 times is only fun for so long. Now, this game has an interesting origin story. It was made in just 48 hours for the Ludum Dare number 31 competition. The theme was entire game on one screen, and the developer managed to create a top-down survival shooter that's simple but surprisingly fun. The premise is straightforward. You're in a dangerous downtown district surrounded by mobsters, and you've got to fight your way through waves of enemies. You'll scavenge for weapons, manage your ammo, and try not to die. For something made in such a short time, it's actually impressive. Sure, it's not groundbreaking, and it doesn't have the depth of other games on this list, but it's a fun little time killer. Just don't expect it to hold your attention for too long. And at 19th position, we have the HHanded Chronicle 2. And let me tell you, this is a huge step up from the first HHanded game. The visuals are vastly improved, with more objects to interact with, and better sound design that really pulls you into the creepy atmosphere. It's still running on the Quake engine, but the puzzles are more rewarding, the immersion is stronger, and it genuinely delivers some chills without resorting to cheap jumpscares. That said, the game still has its quirks, like the always run option not working, and the fact that it's easy to get stuck if you don't figure out the puzzles quickly. But overall, this is a prime example of a developer learning from his efforts and improving in all the right ways. It's not perfect, but it's definitely worth a look if you enjoy atmospheric horror with some brain-teasing puzzles. At 18th place, we've got Laser Arena. This game is basically laser tag in video game form. No gore, no violence, just pure fun with lasers, and honestly, that's kind of refreshing. It features 15 futuristic environments and even has some unique mechanics like laser grenades that tag everyone in the area. The graphics are decent for the time, and the gameplay is easy to pick up. Sure, it's a budget title, so don't expect groundbreaking visuals or deep storytelling, but it captures the spirit of laser tag pretty well. If you've ever wanted to relive those childhood laser tag battles without leaving your house, this game is a nostalgic little treat. Just don't expect it to hold your attention for too long. In 17th place we have the Mansion 182. Now, this is a small game, and I mean small. It's literally just one scenario where you're trapped in a mansion trying to survive waves of enemies. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in simplicity and charm. Destroy crates to get ammo and health, unlock blocked doors by finding weapons, and try not to get overwhelmed by enemies. It's easy to play but hard to master, and there is a certain satisfaction in its straightforward arcade-style gameplay. It's not trying to be the next big thing. It knows exactly what it is and delivers on that. If you're looking for a quick, challenging time killer, the Mansion 182 has got you covered. Just don't expect a sprawling epic. Coming in at 16th place is Berserker Quest 6. And this game is unique. Imagine a dungeon crawler with challenging real-time combat, co-op for up to 4 players, and for some reason ostriches. Yeah, ostriches. The combat system is surprisingly varied, with a decent selection of weapons, magic and armor to find. The levels are rough and can be unforgiving, but once you get the hang of the mechanics, it's actually pretty satisfying. The graphical style is rough but original, and there's a certain charm to its offbeat humor and difficulty curve. That said, the game hasn't aged perfectly, and it definitely feels like it's been abandoned by the developer. But if you're into dungeon crawlers and don't mind a challenge, Berserker Quest 6 is worth a shot. Just don't forget to summon those ostriches. At 15, we've got Diver, a quirky little game that really takes a plunge, pun intended. It's a survival game with 8 maps, a shopkeeper who might murder you, and a surprising amount of unlockable content. The underwater setting adds a unique twist, with plenty of fish to catch, predators to avoid, and loot to find. There is even a customizable difficulty level, so you can make things as easy or as challenging as you want. The gameplay is simple but addictive, and the visuals and sound design do a great job of pulling you into its underwater world. It's not the most ambitious game on this list, but it's a solid, fun experience that doesn't take itself too seriously. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a murderous shopkeeper? At 14th place is Steelstorm, a top-down shooter that's had, let's call it, a mixed reception. On one hand, some reviewers praise its polished gameplay, addictive mechanics, and charming shmup style. It's been called a highly polished adventure, and even earned some glowing reviews from indie game fans. On the other hand, Some critics call it repetitive and monotonous, with gameplay that grinds you down rather than builds you up. Even Metacritic only gives it at 55%, and the Steam community isn't exactly head over heels for it either. That said, there's clearly a lot of love put into this game, and if you're into the genre, it's worth giving it a shot. With over 295,000 downloads, it's safe to say Steelstorm has found its audience, even if it's not for everyone. Coming in at 13th is Super QOT, as an April Fool's joke that ended up being a surprisingly innovative take on Quake. The developers took the shareware version of the original game, updated it with the DarkPlaces engine, and infused it with the signature gameplay mechanics of Super Hot. The result? Minimalist reimagining of Quake where time only moves when you do. The name is a bright red, the environment is stark white and blue, and the action is intense. It's not a fully fleshed out game, but it's a brilliant homage to both Quake and Super Hot, showcasing just how flexible the Quake engine can be. Plus, it's completely free and standalone, so there's no excuse not to check it out. At 12th place we've got Nexes, a fast-paced arena shooter that's basically a love letter to the classic multiplayer experiences of the late 90s. It features 9 weapons with primary and secondary fire modes, a variety of game types like capture the flag and freeze tag, and still some servers for competitive play. What really sets Nexes apart is how it modernizes the Quake formula with an updated engine and optimized code. It's perfect for everyone who misses the glory days of LAN parties, who wants to experience that same chaos online. Sure, it's not breaking new ground, but it's a solid, fun experience that'll scratch that competitive itch. Coming in hot at 11th place is Fortress 1, a free and open source remake of the original Team Fortress mod for Quake World. This game is a masterclass in nostalgia, taking the fast-paced, class-based FPS gameplay that defined an era and giving it a shiny new coat of paint. It's got refined graphics, evolved mechanics, and the same addictive gameplay that made the original Team Fortress a classic. Whether you're capturing flags or coordinating with your team to dominate the arena, Fortress 1 is a brilliant reminder of how influential Team Fortress was. And the best part? It's free! This is a must-play for fans of the genre. Kicking off our top 10 is Battle Metal, a mech simulator that feels like MechWarrior had a baby with Earth Siege, then dipped it in a layer of Quake engine junk, and I mean that in the best way possible. This game lets you customize your mechs, tweak your loadouts, and drop into the desolate world of Geysera to blast your way through 15 missions. The WASD mouse controls bring fast-paced action to a genre that's usually more methodical, and the love and passion behind the project really shine through. That said, it's not without its flaws. Hit feedback can be frustrating and the pacing is a little uneven, with early missions feeling harder than the later ones. But if you've ever wanted to stomp around in a giant robot and blow stuff up, Battle Metal delivers that experience in spades. For the price of a few cups of coffee, it's hard to say no. At number 9 is Brazilian drug dealer Free. I opened a portal to hell in the favela, trying to revive Med Aya. I need to close it. And yes, that's the actual title. What can I say? This game is absolute chaos, in the best and worst ways imaginable. You're running around dilapidated favelas, fighting demons, sicarios, football fans, and Japanese rats, while high BPM electronic music assaults your eardrums. The level design is hilariously low effort, and yet the absurdity of it all keeps you glued to your screen. It's like if Postal 2 and Quake had a child that overdosed on Red Bull and launched itself into a brick wall. Is it a good game? That's debatable. But is it entertaining? Absolutely. If you want an unforgettable chaotic experience, grab this game for a few bucks, blast your speakers, and let the madness begin. In 8th place we have Station 37, a survival horror-ish FPS that's big on atmosphere and system shock vibes. You're navigating a decaying research facility, hoarding bullets, and reading notes to piece together the story. It's short, almost too short, but the gameplay nails that retro FPS feel. There's a lot to like here: solid gameplay, moody music, and a nice price tag. That said, it's not perfect. The maps can feel bland and the mechanics are sometimes clunky. Weapons disappear after a certain number of shots, even if you still have ammo. Why? I don't know, it's frustrating. But if you love old school shooters with a touch of survival horror, Station 37 is a worthy little gem. It may not blow your mind, but it'll scratch that nostalgic itch. At 7th place we've got Nexes, an arena shooter with an impressive pedigree, featuring 9 weapons, 24 official maps, over 240 community-created maps, and a full single-player campaign. It's a buffet of Quake-inspired chaos. The graphics are surprisingly robust, with bloom effects, dynamic lighting, and shaders that still hold up. Plus, it's open source, so players have gone wild with mods and custom game types. If you're into fast-paced, competitive FPS action, Nexes is a must-play. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it's a polished, adrenaline-filled shooter that knows exactly where it wants to be. Just outside the top 5 is Doombringer, a classic arena FPS built on the DarkPlaces engine. This game delivers everything you'd expect from a Quake-inspired shooter: fast physics, punchy weapons, and satisfying frags. But it goes a step further with a surprisingly solid single-player campaign. The first 9 maps are already available, and they are packed with secrets, enemy variety, and excellent level design. There's even a speedrunning mode that adds loads of replayability. Multiplayer is free, but there might not be any servers online at the moment. That said, it's not perfect. Some mechanics feel odd, like the weapon reloading, and the textures can be a bit uninspired. But for fans of old school shooters, Doombringer is a must-play. It's rough around the edges, sure, but the love and passion behind it make it shine. Starting off the top 5 is Hellenism, a modern retro FPS that perfectly captures the essence of classic Quake gameplay. It's fast, frantic, and unapologetically brutal, with levels that feel like they've been ripped straight out of the 90s, but with a modern coat of paint. The variety of weapons and enemies keeps things exciting, and the DarkPlaces engine ensures the visuals are crisp while maintaining that retro charm. The game also nails the sound design, with punchy audio that makes every frag feel satisfying. It's not without its flaws. The level design can feel a bit repetitive at times, but Hellenism more than makes up for it with its sheer fun factor. If you're a fan of old school shooters, this is a game that deserves our attention. Coming in at 4th place is Xonotic, an entirely free-to-play arena shooter and the spiritual successor to Nexes. This game is fast, chaotic, and packed with features. Think Quake meets Unreal Tournament. The movement is buttery smooth, with mechanics like grappling hooks and rocket jumps, adding layers of depth to the gameplay. The maps are visually stunning, blending nostalgic designs with modern lighting and textures. And the weapons? Balanced, creative, and oh so satisfying to use. The multiplayer scene is where Xonotic truly shines, offering a competitive and addictive experience. While the player base isn't massive, it's passionate, and the community has kept the game alive for over a decade. If you're craving high-octane FPS action, Xonotic delivers in spades. Taking the bronze medal is Hexon II, a fantasy-themed FPS that takes the Quake engine to magical new heights, with multiple classes, intricate hub-based levels, and weapons ranging from medieval to arcane. This game stands out as a unique entry in the FPS genre. The puzzles are challenging, sometimes overly so, and the level design demands exploration and backtracking. It's a game that practically requires a walkthrough, but that's part of its charm. The environments are gorgeous, the combat is satisfying, and the overall vibe is unforgettable. Sure, the controls and mechanics feel dated, and the storyline can be a bit confusing, but Hexon II is still an epic adventure that's well worth revisiting, especially if you're a fan of fantasy FPS games. In second place we've got Red, Aeon of Ruin. A gothic horror FPS that starts strong but struggles to maintain its momentum. Built on the Quake engine, this game nails the atmosphere with its dark visuals and satisfying gore. The levels are vast, the weapons come with alternate fire modes, and there's a solid variety of enemies to take down, though some might argue it's not quite enough. The hubs and level teams are well executed, but can feel a little repetitive over time. The gameplay itself is a mixed bag. It's fast and controls well, but the weapons lack the oomph that makes combat feel rewarding, and the difficulty spikes can make progression frustrating. Don't get me wrong, Red is a solid game that fans of the genre will appreciate, but it doesn't quite reach the heights of its inspirations. It's beautiful homage to old school shooters, but it leaves just a little to be desired. And finally, the undisputed king of the list, Quake. This isn't just a game, it's a piece of gaming history. The remastered version by Night Dive Studios and Machine Games breathes new life into this iconic title, with enhanced graphics, built-in multiplayer, and 2 brand new episodes that pay tribute to the original's brilliance. The gameplay remains as tight and satisfying as ever, with weapons that feel powerful and enemies that are a joy to give. The level design is legendary, and the soundtrack by Trent Reznor still gets the gold standard for atmospheric music in games. But Quake isn't just about nostalgia, it's the foundation of modern FPS games, influencing everything that came after it. If you've never played it, the remaster is the perfect way to experience the magic, and if you have, well, it's always a good time to go back. Long live Quake, the game that defined the genre and set the bar for everything that followed. And that wraps up our journey through the world of Quake engine games. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more rankings, reviews, and other gaming goodness. Did I miss any Quake engine games? Let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, tell me which positions would you change. I'd love to hear your takes. Now here's the deal, if this video gets enough views, I'll dive into the Quake 2 engine next, ranking every single game built on it. And if you're a fan of my Doom engine games ranked, well, good news, a part 2 is on the horizon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep gaming and stay awesome.